Good morning and welcome to Live Without Limits. Transform your thinking to redesign your life. I'm your host, Davida Shensky, and in this podcast, we're going to dive into the strategies, tools, and letting life's challenges break you. Or rather, let's say it this way. We're going to dive into the strategies, the tools, the mindset shifts that help you create the life you want without letting life's challenges break you. I'm your host, Davida Shensky, and today it's about something we all face at one point or another, losing control of our thoughts. You know, those moments when your mind starts spiraling, the what ifs get louder, the fears pile on, and you feel like your thoughts are running you instead of you running them. I've been there, and I know how easy it is to go from feeling in control to feeling completely hijacked by your own mind. But here's the good news: you can take that control back, and you can do it before your thoughts break you. So, in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to walk you through why it happens, how to recognize it early, practical ways to ground yourself in the moment, and the routines that help you build long term resilience. So, let's get started. And the first thing we're going to talk about is understanding why we lose control of our thoughts. Well, let's talk about why we lose control of our thoughts. Our brains are wired with something called a negativity bias. From an evolutionary standpoint, it was designed to keep us safe, to spot danger before it happened. The problem is modern life. The brain still works the same way, scanning for problems and amplifying them even when there's no real threat. When stress hits, whether it's a harsh email, a financial setback, or a personal conflict, your brain interprets it like danger. That's when the mental spiral starts. You replay conversations, you catastrophize, you create entire scenarios in your head that haven't even happened. Emotional triggers make it even worse. Stress, fear, shame, or even unresolved past trauma can cause your thoughts to race behind your control. And the longer you stay in that spiral, the harder it is to get out. So here's the cost: uncontrolled thoughts don't just cause anxiety, they cause and can lead to poor decision making, damage your relationships, and drain your energy. That's why it's so important to learn how to spot signs early and intervene before the spiral deepens. Now, think about it. The daily life anxiety triggers. Before we can regain control of our thoughts, we have to understand what's causing them to spiral in the first place. Anxiety rarely comes out of nowhere. It's usually triggered by something in our daily life. And the tricky part is those triggers can be big and obvious or subtle and easy to miss. So let's break them down into categories that you can start recognizing for yourself. Work and career success. We live in a fast fast-paced, performance-driven world. Tight deadlines, heavy workloads, or fear underperforming can put constant pressure on us. Job insecurity, difficult workplace relationships, or public speaking responsibilities that can easily tip us into an anxiety if we're not careful. Finance pressures, money, worries are one of the top anxiety triggers for most people, whether it's debt, unexpected expenses, or just a day to day fear. Not having enough financial stress can hang over you like a cloud and quietly influence your decisions that you make. Relationship challenges, misunderstanding, arguments, or unresolved issues with friends, partners, or family can leave us feeling emotionally unsettled. Even subtle tension, the unspoken something is off feeling, can keep our minds in a constant state of alert. Health related concerns. When it comes to health, uncertainty is huge trigger. Waiting for test results, dealing with chronic pain, or worrying about our appearance that can consume mental energy. And it's not just about our own health. The health of loved ones can weigh heavily on our minds. Life transitions, change, even when it's positive, can be stressful. Moving, starting a new job, ending a relationship, or adjusting to a major life shift like parenthood can throw off our mental balance. These moments often combine excitement with uncertainty, which is fertile ground for anxiety. Information overload with news and social media at our fingertips 24/7. We're constantly exposed to distressing stories, comparison traps, and unrealistic expectations. This can quietly build into chronic background anxiety without us even realizing it. Lifestyle factors. Sometimes the trigger isn't even an event, it's a habit. Lack of sleep, poor diet, too much caffeine, or not enough exercise all affect your nervous system. A tired or depleted body makes it much harder to keep our thoughts in check. Internal pressures. There's the anxiety that we create ourselves, perfectionism, fear of failure, overthinking, or feeling out of control. Sometimes the most relentless critic is the voice inside our own head. There's the takeaway. Anxiety triggers aren't always dramatic. They can be woven into our everyday routines and relationships. The more you can identify your personal triggers, the faster you can step in, shift your thoughts, and keep them from spiraling. Recognizing warning signs early. Awareness is your first line of defense. If you can recognize the warning signs early, you can stop the spiral before it has momentum. Physical cues. You might notice a racing heart, tight shoulders, shallow breathing, or feeling restless. Mental cues. You keep looping on the same thought, running through worst case scenarios, or having trouble focusing on anything else, you might feel suddenly irritable, hopeless, or disconnected, like you're watching your life from the outside. The earlier you catch these cues and signs, the easier it is to bring yourself back to center. Think of it like seeing a small fire. Easier to put out a candle than a forest fire, which brings us to the next step, grounding yourself in the moment. So here's how you can explain why it's important to recognize the warning signs, both for your own understanding and as a segment for your Reclaim Your Mind. Why we need to recognize the warning signs. Here's the thing about losing control of your thoughts. It doesn't usually happen all at once. It starts with small signals, a little tension in your shoulders, a thought you keep replaying, a slight shift in your mood. If you don't catch these signals early, they build. And before we know it, we're in a full mental spiral that feels almost impossible to pull out of. Recognizing the warning signs matters because it's easier to stop a spiral early than to reverse it later. Just like it's easier to put out a small candle than a raging fire. Catching yourself in the early stages saves you from hours or even days of mental exhaustion. It gives you back your power. When you can say, wait, I'm starting to overthink or feel the tightness in my chest, you shift from being reactive to being proactive. It protects your relationships and decisions. When anxiety is running the show, we're more likely to say or do things that we regret. Recognizing the signs means that you can step back and respond with clarity instead of emotion. It builds self trust. Every time you notice the signs and redirect your thoughts, you prove to yourself that you can handle challenges without letting them break you. That confidence compounds over time. The earlier you notice you're drifting into a negative thought loop, the easier it is to steer your mind back on course. When your thoughts start to run away from you, you need techniques that can bring you back fast. So here are some favorite tools. So what we're talking about now is grounding and resetting in the moment. Pause and breathe. Use slow, controlled breathing to calm your nervous system. Try the 4-7-8 method. Breathe in for 4 seconds. Hold for 7. Breathe out for 8. Name the thought. When you say to yourself, this is just a thought, not a fact, you create space between you and it. That space gives you the power to choose how to respond. Redirect with questions. Ask yourself, is this thought time? What evidence do I have? There's another way to see this. Your brain loves to solve problems, so give it better ones to solve. Physical reset. Move your body. Walk around. Stretch. Change rooms. Drink a glass of water. A physical shift signals to your brain that the moment is changing. Sensory grounding. Engage your senses to pull yourself back to the present. Name 5 things that you can see, 4 that you can touch, 3 that you can hear, 2 that you can smell, and 1 that you can taste. The more often you use these tools, the faster they'll work when you need them most. So, building a thought control routine. Taking control in the moment is powerful, but building a daily routine is what gives you the long-term stability. Here's what I recommend. Daily journaling. Get your thoughts out of your head and on paper. This declutters your mind and helps you see patterns that you can change. Affirmations and reframing. Replace negative default thoughts with intentional ones. Instead of, I can't handle this, try, I have the ability to figure things out. Visualization. Create a mental safe space. Or imagine yourself handling challenges calmly. Your brain doesn't know the difference between imagined and real practice. Information boundaries. Limit how much negative news or toxic social media you consume. What you feed your mind shapes your thoughts. I want to go back a little bit to when we're talking about information, because right now there's so much happening on the news and conflicting messages that are being put out there. And I know some people tend to get all their news from one place, and you got to really diversify, because you got to be able to realize that that people are putting out news according to the agenda that they want you to hear, and it causes hatred. And that's what we're seeing come out today. So, mindfulness and meditation every 5 minutes a day, a focused breathing or present moment awareness can strengthen your ability to redirect your attention. Long-term resilience strategies. Let's talk about resilience. This is the skill that lets you become a bounce back faster when life knocks you off balance. Create a mental health toolbox, a list of go-to strategies that you can use when stress spikes. Strengthen emotional regulation through habits like exercise, sleep, or healthy eating. Seek support, whether from a coach, a therapist, or a trusted friend. Don't try to carry it all alone. Celebrate small wins. Every time you catch yourself taking control sooner, acknowledge it. Progress builds confidence. Here's the truth. You can't stop every negative racing thought from showing up, but you can control whether they run your life by recognizing the early signs, grounding yourself in the moment, and building daily habits that strengthen your mind. You can protect your mental clarity and your peace. So here's my challenge to you this week. Choose one of the grounding techniques from today's episode and practice it every day for the next 7 days. even if you don't feel overwhelmed. Training your brain when it matters most. So, what I also want to do is get into some more detail on how to regain control of your mind, because how you control yourself and your thoughts depends on you and how you think. So, how to reclaim your thoughts and control of life. So, let's look at it this way. We're talking about some mindfulness and some good techniques that can really help you. So, let's look at how to reclaim some of your thoughts and some of your thinking. Therefore, it will help you to put yourself into a different frame of mind, and how you look at your life and how you look at the things that you do and the way that you can control your thoughts, because we can do that. And there are some things that you can definitely do. So let's look at it. When you're thinking, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I want to talk about how to reframe your thinking. So you first want to look at how to identify the challenge, journaling, lifestyle environment. And let's look at the environment that we live in today, because how does that affect our thinking? And how does that, and well, I guess what I want to do is look at why it is so toxic, because when you live in a toxic environment, what that does is it really affects how you perceive things in your life. And let's say if you are looking at maintaining, like when you live, I can tell you, when you live in a toxic environment where you're constantly being belittled, where you're constantly being told you can't do anything, what happens? Well, then it really ends up putting you in a position where your thoughts really take aim at looking at the negative and seeing things in such a way that, for so many of us, what it's really done is to take you and, well, but when you have negative thoughts constantly in your mind, what is happening to you? You begin to internalize those thoughts. And as you internalize those thoughts, how do you get rid of them? And how do you think and deal with toxic people in your life? Because what it does is that when you're around, and I know because I've lived in an environment where I've been around toxic people. My mother was so negative. Both my parents came from homes that were negative. And when they got together, they created a negative environment themselves. And so one of the things that I found, because of the way my mother treated me, I had to limit the relationship I had with her. Once I got out of her home and went to live on my own, I knew going back there was never an answer, because if things didn't work out for me and I went back, she would constantly remind me how I failed. And you don't really want to be around that because you need to find a way to get over being toxic. And what happens when you live in that toxic environment? Well, it literally defeats you. It puts you in a position that you cannot, I'm not finding the right words. So to deal with toxic parents, establish firm, non-negotiable boundaries, limit contact, and don't try to change them. As it's beyond your control, prioritize your mental and physical health through self-care. Build a strong support system with trusted friends and family, and consider seeking professional help from a therapist. Create an exit strategy for challenging interactions. Practice techniques like journaling or process emotions. And one of the reasons that I wanted to put that out there is very, very simple. That many years ago, because I grew up with a disability at a time when there were no laws that allowed people with disabilities the right to an education, the right to employment. Therefore, what happened? I was put in a situation where I was constant. Well, when I did go to school, because the teachers didn't understand that to sit in a classroom where I listen to lectures or I go home and I read the book, that is not how I learn. I learn by actually taking the theories and applying them. And if you understand how you learn, how you deal with people, and that if you're around someone that's going to constantly criticize you because you don't do things the way they like it done, then they are the ones that have the issue, not you. And unless they're willing to go in for counseling with you and learn to communicate better, then the best way for you to relate to them is literally to have no relationship with them. As they say, it's if you want to keep your own mental health, you have to protect yourself because they will not allow you to feel, to take care, to be who you want to be. They want to control how you see things, how you relate to the world. Because, and I can tell you this much, a family works in the way it works very simply because each person responds in a certain way. And when one person changes that behavior, what happens? Well, then there's a breakdown in the communication in the family, and they're going to try and bring you back and bring you back. And if you, therefore, because are they only what's happening is they're losing the control, and that control is so important to them because they can't control certain things within themselves, so they try to control the person around them so that that person feeds into their ego. And the only way you can react to that is to understand where they're coming from, relate to the fact that they have their own issues, and until you become and take control of your life. This is why often I can say this, that when a parent fails in the goals of what they want to do, they will try to gear the children into living what the life they wanted, Therefore, they get it vicariously. And if it's not your choice, then when you start exerting your own control and your own decisions, they are going to constantly beat it down and not allow you to live the life you want to live, because then you're taking away what they feel is their livelihood. Their, 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 let me find the right words. If when a parent has a specific profession in mind and they can't meet the goals that they want, and they find that the child has the talent to go further than they did, and they take that child and take away their childhood and put them to do something that they may themselves not really want, and then deny them the, the right to choose their road that they want to take, because then it's taken away from them the lifestyle, the 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 profession that they wanted for themselves. And when you find parents that do this, what they're doing is they are reliving their life through their child, and they will constantly beat you down mentally and emotionally to keep you where you are. Therefore, that's why when I say, when you change your mindset, you usually have to get away from that family and find a support system that encourages you to be who you want to be. And I want to thank you and hope you got something out of today's show, and return next week for our next installment.